well, we can start with introductions. I'm Dani LeBlanc. I use she, her pronouns. I am at the Museum of Science. I'm our center director for, two different titles. The Immersive Theaters Director, so I oversee the Planetarium and the Mugar Omni Theater, where we would love to one day talk about potentially bringing this film. I also oversee the Center for Space Sciences at the museum, which means I work with the teams across the institution to do astronomy and space science storytelling through all of the different channels that the museum has, exhibits, curriculum development, the digital channels, with me and my team. So I'm going to pass it over to Talia.
Hello everybody, my name is Talia Sepersky. I use she, her pronouns. I am a planetarium educator at the Museum of Science in the Charles Hayden Planetarium. I also write the museum's weekly space newsletter, Spacing Out. Subscribe on the museum website. All to say, I am a raging space nerd. That's my cardigan. Which means I was very excited to get to talk to all three of these fascinating people over here, who we will let introduce themselves.
I'm gonna pass this to our Steve first.
Hello everyone. My name is Lamman, and I'm a graduate student at Harvard's Center for Astrophysics. I use data from a telescope on a mountaintop in Arizona. We map out the positions of galaxies, study what the universe looks like on really big scales, and figure out things about dark matter, dark energy, and why we're here. I also love science fiction.
Hi, I'm Emily Pass. I am a postdoctoral researcher at MIT. Although I was at Harvard before, and Claire and I were office mates for a long time. I work on exoplanets, so the planets around other stars, not for SETI, but thinking about how planets around other stars are different, and other solar systems are different from our own, and what that means for the planets that orbit them, and whether we could potentially have life there or habitable planets. Nice to be here.
We have such a brilliant panel here, can I just say, I feel so lucky, thank you both.
You guys get to keep
Yeah,
talking.
thank you, Dad.
I have a question to start off with for Katie, because it looked like, I was, watching, it has a memorial to Frank Drake, who died in 2022. Looks like Ellie graduated high school in 2018. How many years did this take to come together?
Yeah, a really long time. I got the idea for the film in 2015. I had made a film before that and was thinking it would be nice to make a second one. But I was going through a very kind of intense emotional time in my life. My mom had just died, and I had also just given birth, and I was pregnant again. And so I was kind of grappling with my own questions of connection and losing this connection to my mom, and then kind of forging these new connections with my small babies. And just thinking about what that all meant. And so one day I was like, wow, I wonder if there's a place without cell phones. Turns out there was. And the rest is history. So I went down there to Green Bank in 2016, met kind of the cast of characters that you're seeing around that time, started filming with them. Up until 2019, and then COVID hit. We took a long break, a very long break. Thankfully, Josh, Ellie's brother in the film, he picked up his camera and shot her building that telescope because we couldn't be there because of COVID, but we just got it done. And then, we finally finished the film, and it premiered in 2024, in April. So 8 years, 9 years, real long time.
Yeah, sure. And I was going to ask for scientists who've just seen the film. Have you seen the film before? And I guess what reflections do you have, having watched it and just knowing that this telescope, as well as the other telescopes that are lending themselves to this very, very real, current, awesome research that you're both involved in? What reflections did you have from the film?
I thought it was amazing. I've done a lot of science communication, and this is a very different type of communication that I've seen before, but I think it's so important because it does something that a lot of science advocacy can easily miss, which is the impact of science and science infrastructure on local communities, and the fact that it's an investment and there are real humans working on this and addressing very fundamental human questions. And so just Green Bank itself is a fantastic observatory, but I knew that already, and my first impressions from the film were just what an excellent job it did at bringing the human side to this scientific endeavor.
Yeah, as someone who grew up in a really rural place, a lot of those kind of themes resonated with me. The trade-off of being in somewhere where there's not a lot of light pollution, or in that case, other types of quietness, wave pollution, and how remarkable that is to excite people about science, but then also the maybe more negative side of it, where remote places where you don't have access to Wi-Fi or technology, and then in those communities, people will be very excited about the prospect of having access to that technology, and that trade-off that you see between the pros and the cons of being in a rural space. I know where I grew up, the idea of having Starlink internet and stuff is very exciting to people, but then there's always a lot of cons for that for our quiet skies. So that's definitely something that made me think of. Hearing Ellie's story really resonated with me personally, getting into astronomy by seeing popular science books and just having that type of communication to get when you grow up in a place that doesn't necessarily have access to those resources, being able to see all these cool things through books and in media and in science fiction, of course. So I thought it was an amazing film.
That does sort of bring up another question I had for all three of you. We met Ellie, who credits Carl Sagan and Brian Cox with inspiring her to pursue astronomy. I was wondering if you had any specific mentors or specific moments or experiences that ultimately brought you to the fields that you went into astronomy, into filmmaking.
I was fortunate as a kid to have parents like Ellie's that noticed I was interested in science from an early age and really went out of their way to take me to museums and see films like this and bought me books about astronomy that I definitely didn't understand, but pretended like I did until it was true. And not to be trite, but man, Carl Sagan's Contact, that was a huge influence on me.
Carl Sagan rocks.
Yeah.
One book that I really loved as a teenager was The Hidden Reality. It's like a pop science book about physics, and I remember reading that and thinking it was so cool, and it made me want to go to college to study physics, even though I never took high school physics. So I think that those kind of stories have a big impact on people. And another thing that really excited me and got me interested in astronomy, I got to see an astronaut give a public talk, and just hearing about what it's like to be an astronaut. I would never be an astronaut. I'm more of an astronaut, but just hearing people so excited and getting to do these amazing things really inspired me to think about astronomy, even though it wasn't something I necessarily had exposure to when I was younger.
I would say that I wasn't into science and astronomy at all when I was a kid. And I'm just so grateful that by being a storyteller, filmmaker, I get to learn things I never learned when I was a kid, and it's never too late. And that I'm grateful for that, because even just watching the film now, sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I learned a lot making this. I didn't know what any of this stuff meant before I made the film, and I hope other people will come see the film and appreciate it from that blank slate and feel if nothing else, they feel the humanistic element of it, and that then gives them a greater appreciation for the science.
I know, at least for me, I have, and probably, hopefully for some of you, I have the urgency to go and build a radio telescope out in my backyard and just put the phone away and just connect. It really, really brought that. And to see these folks in this community being so close and so tight and having, sort of in the back of their minds all the time, these big picture questions that is right as part of their fabric is really awesome. And I feel like it's something that we can all use reminders of getting that. So I think we're going to turn it to audience Q&A. So raise your hand. We'll repeat the question. Just give us a nice loud question here for the group right in the front there.
Near about 2/3 of the way through the film, you've got a scene of these people driving around in a truck looking for Wi-Fi signals. Are people not in that area no longer respecting the National Quiet Zone? And if so, why aren't they doing anything about it? It sounded like they were driving around the truck, but they weren't going to do anything about what they saw.
Yeah, it's complicated. There are two laws. One is a federal law, which is the National Radio Quiet Zone, and then there's the West Virginia Quiet Zone. And the national law regulates land-based fixed structures like cell phone towers. So that's staying out because you can't have corporations come in and build those. What's harder is to police it on a personal level. So technically those people are breaking the law, so to speak, but the telescope has to live in a community with all these people, and they don't actually want to go around knocking on everyone's door, giving citations and pissing everyone off. So
But
this is what happened.
But at the same time, the people who have this EMF sensitivity, aren't they depending on
Yes.
those signals not being there?
Correct, yes,
So,
yeah, so
But it's
Yeah.
not for their benefit that exists.
it's, right, and is it even a quiet zone anymore? I mean, it's more quiet, I would say, and I'm not the expert on this, than other communities that have a radio telescope where people live. I mean, I know there's a radio astronomer in the audience, I don't want to put him on the spot, but there are radio telescopes that are built in far-flung places where maybe there aren't a ton of a general store right there, or a Dollar General, and so you're not fighting against everybody wanting Wi-Fi, everything. But to your point, from what I understand, they've I forgot whatever frequency. No, that's not the right word. Whatever band Wi-Fi is on, it's the band of the spectrum. What? Say it.
2.4 gigahertz.
Yes, the astronomers have kind of Mike told me, we just given up on that. And then that makes me sad, because I'm well, what if there's something in there? We're just gonna get rid of that band. Maybe ET's there, we don't know.
I saw in the back in the purple. Yes, you.
Well, I want to give a shout out to the Museum of Science people. I hope that you, Museum of Science people, do get this movie here. But I gotta say, I was at the Planetarium show about 3 weeks ago, and you guys have a guy who's an exobiologist.
Philippe on Saturdays, yes. He also works at the Center for Astrophysics, and he's a part-time
Absolutely.
aerobic.
He could do Saturday Night Live. He's hilarious. And he's brilliant. And he had all of the kids in the audience. I can't believe what these 7-year-olds know these days. I mean, it's a wonderful show. And Museum of Science is really, from my perspective over the years, really up to date.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
And
You did not
shout
plant this at all.
Show on as soon as you can, and I'll be watching for it.
Amazing. Well, we definitely want to. This is the kind of science storytelling that we love to do, and we do in across as many platforms and channels as we possibly can. So thank you for kind words. And yes, we will continue the chat.
This guy we do know.
This guy, yeah, he's a Museum of Science connection. Mark, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question and then one for the panelists. Is there any interest in the people in this area in optical telescopes? I mean, is the sky dark at night? I mean, what's it like for stargazing? And then the follow-up on that is to ask the other panelists and the moderators if you had one of those experiences looking through a telescope when you were young that inspired you.
I mean, I guess, amateur astronomers, the GBT doesn't have optical telescopes as part of their instruments, but I imagine that, yes, hobby astronomers are out there, and it is very dark and beautiful. Although we could never really get an image with our camera the way we wanted to of the night sky. We tried so hard, which is why we ended up doing the animation of the stars. It's a special type of camera equipment for that. Was there a question?
Well, just about if you ever had that moment of looking through a telescope, like I had one with a microscope when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Kind of inspired you.
Just to start on the, if it would be a good place for an optical telescope, the kind of environment you want for an optical telescope is a bit different than what you want for radio. Because you want to put an optical telescope as high up as you can, so you're not looking through a lot of Earth's atmosphere in order to see out to the stars, because all the water and other gases in our atmosphere get in the way. So the fact that it's down is good for radio because it prevents it from getting the interference from the sources, but it's not great for optical because you want to be up on top as high as you can get. Cool. In terms of looking through a telescope, I didn't have, I think, an opportunity to do that until I went to college. But maybe Claire has a story?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I also grew up in a small town, rural Wyoming, and there was a lunar eclipse one night my dad told me about, and he knew I liked science, and he's like, and we had this really old telescope that he found in my grandparents' basement. It's like, we could probably figure out how to get it working, and we lugged it up the hill behind our house. He woke me up at 3 a.m., and we fiddled with it, and it never quite worked. Like, even if we got it to work, it was such an old telescope, and not really something better. But even though this was a failure, I just loved it so much. Like, the adventure of waking up in the middle of the night, going out with my dad, and like looking up at the moon. No one else was around. It was so quiet, and like, even when failures are exciting, that just like tells me I'm in the right place. Yeah.
Dani and Talia?
Well, I know she has been looking at the telescope many, I'm not going to take your.
Has anybody ever seen Saturn through a telescope? That's all it takes.
Well said.
It's amazing, yeah, it doesn't look real, it looks like, I mean, it just.
I once was accused of putting a sticker on the end of the telescope. That's true, no, you put a sticker, it's
wild.
no, that's Saturn.
It is, and one thing that I will say, just, like, Massachusetts is the only state in New England that does not have a dark skies policy, so it is one of the things that the Museum of Science is trying to advocate for, and there are folks coming back into the legislature right now, they're gonna be putting the bill forth, so, follow us on the MOS socials, all the things, if you want to learn more about preserving dark skies. It is so important for so many reasons, and keeping us connected to the things in space, not just for research, but for just environmental reasons and so many reasons. So we will continue to send that messages out and do the advocacy there. All right, one more question from the audience, right here in front.
It was a lovely film. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You interview people from a bunch of different backgrounds, right? People running the observatory, people who moved there because they believe that technology makes them ill, students. Was there any group or person who was particularly hard, or any challenges like, we don't want electronic cameras near us, or we're really busy, we don't have time to talk to you, or something that was a real difficulty in making this?
And then just before, did everybody hear that? Okay.
Yeah, like, who was the least welcoming?
Was the town welcoming in general, or?
It's interesting. No, the electrosensitive group is an interesting group because I think for anyone who's going through something where other people are not on board with you about it, right? Like, you desperately want that attention, to have a space to talk about it. But there has been like a lot of news crews that have been down to Green Bank, like particularly for that reason, to like spotlight that community. And oftentimes like those stories would be like really kind of damaging and like clickbaity. So I just tried to tread lightly there because I knew that wasn't like the intent, and I knew there would be a lot of questions from people about like, is this real or is this not real? And I just really wanted them to seem fully human. And so, yeah, there were members of that community who were like, what's your deal? So it took some time to kind of win them over. But it worked out, and they're thrilled with the way it came out. And I think they feel like it's, a story that finally like represents them in a way that they feel good about. But no, I didn't find a lot of other resistance. I would actually say like, I wish I had interviewed more people like Barbara, because everyone really loves Barbara, George's girlfriend, and I think they were like, we love her perspective, this like old timer who's kind of like, what's it all about? And sometimes I wish I had gotten like more of her generation of folks who were just like a little bit more suspicious.
Not too late, part two, the sequel. Let's hear it one more time for the successful